Guess please. All right, so we're already laughing. So thank you, Andrew, for coming on and working on this assignment with me for the new uh, post secondary student implementing change assignment. So Professor Milhauser, this is my son, Andrew. He's currently a senior at Quinnipiac University, and I have mentioned him quite a few times in some of my other assignments. And I thought it would be a really great idea to do a podcast for this assignment, having an open dialogue with Andrew about implementing change and what he sees as a student of today versus what I might see as a long ago student and then a new student of today. He likes to say I went to school in the dinosaur age, which was in the 90s.
1900s,
So when
actually.
I first went to college. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to get two different perspectives while talking about different ways to implement change. So to kind of get us started, Andrew, I know that you and I kind of talked about this a little bit, and we've been bouncing ideas off of each other of what I see as great things to change and things that you see differently maybe than I have, or even the same, and then how to implement them. So
Mhm.
if we were to talk about just flat out implementing change, if you saw something that you're like, yeah, this needs to change, this isn't working for us today, what is your first reaction to that?
Well, I would say it depends on, I guess a community like vote or who thinks what. Because I'm not sure if your professor's familiar with the Quinnipiac poll, but that's a pretty big thing here. So they like to do a lot of research on if a change that is in question, like if that's like something that people want. Actually, one of my professors, I will leave them unnamed because that could get them fired.
That's a good
But
idea.
he tells us a lot.
Don't ever
Um,
name anybody.
I'll say he, but that's about it. Yeah,
That's
he tells
fine.
us a lot more than he should. So it's very interesting. There's an app we use called Yik Yak. It's very it's a dumb app. It's just everyone's anonymous and you just kind of post things anonymously in your school. But we're in college and you're posting anonymously. I mean, just do with that what you will. It's a dumb
Hmm.
app, but they look at it. Quinnipiac has accounts. Teachers are like professors are on Yik Yak and they read what students read. Students post. They read it all. They interact actually. He said he's interacted. He's like started a few major like chains of posts from that. And
So
actually,
go ahead.
oh sorry, you're good.
No, I was just going to ask a question about that. So if you were to say one of the changes from when I went to school that you see is sort of implemented differently today is sort of the digital side of college. So when I went to school, we didn't have any polls. We didn't have an opportunity to say, please change this, or let's talk about this, or talk amongst your peers to talk about it. There was no poll, none of that. Basically, this is you got your syllabus, you followed the assignments, you did what you were supposed to do, and you hoped to succeed in the class and move on to the next class. You have the implementation of this digital world where you have this Yik Yak account where you can go on even anonymously, which I think actually makes sense because, again, you never want to have a name on anything.
Mhm.
But it's an open forum and it allows students to talk about what they would like to see differently, where they're having their challenges. And even if the professors do read it, I actually think that's positive as long as nobody's calling anybody out, and that's on them.
Mhm.
But I think that's really important because in most cases, what I've seen from you and also your sister is you get the majority of your thought process out in written communication, not in verbal communication. So if you have an issue and you go on to Yik Yak and say, I think this really stinks and I think that we should change it, and here are the ways that I think we should change it. That's you, Andrew, implementing change and also giving a process on how to do that. And I actually think that's pretty positive. I did not have that in my college years back in the dinosaur ages. Not in existence at all. We didn't have phones. We didn't have any of that.
You guys didn't
So
have Blackboard. I don't know how you submitted
I didn't
assignments.
have Blackboard. We got written assignments, paper, actual physical paper. So I think that's, a really great way. But so if we were to talk about how the changes are implemented, so if there is something that you feel kind of, so if we were to take into consideration, like for example, when you were in COVID and they gave you a block schedule
Hmm.
and you had to follow that, if you saw that as one of the things that needed to be changed, what is the process you would take to implement that change?
That's a great question. Well,
I
for
can,
block scheduling, I was in high school, so it was that was very similar to college, I feel, because it's very separate times. My schedule, as I've progressed through college, has been a lot more open,
mhm.
and are confined to like 3, 4 days instead of 5 days and spread out evenly. And there actually, for me, there was no like breathing room. I didn't have classes offered Monday or Friday this semester. And
Mhm.
there was like that, like I couldn't do anything. And if a change they could have implemented would have been, I don't know, add more classes and during the week, something like that. But I know that it's a very growing major. There's actually too many. There was too many graphic design minors. That's why they canceled it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they
So
had too many students.
if you're saying there's too many and your thought process say, well, just add more classes. Let
Mhm.
me give you a little bit of
You need more
background.
professors. Yeah,
Right.
you know, and each professor has to write the class.
So
I got a
there's
little insight on that in
elements
another class. It was really interesting.
there's elements to be able to just
Hmm.
add a class. It's not so easy just to pop another class on. So there has to be a vision on how that's going to happen. There has to be a process on creating the calendar to make that work. There has to be the right people to ensure that they can take on doing that. There has to be communication amongst those people. There has to be though sometimes it's even short wins in order to kind of decide, is that going to work or not going to work. And Cotter explains it really well, and how the elements of change and implementing change is that it's easy to say, I think we should do, but to implement that actual change, you have to have a very strategic vision on what you want your outcome to be and how you are going to get there. What are the steps to get there? So, you see that a lot. For me, I see that a lot in the real world. Everything is a strategic plan. Everything has a
Hmm.
step. Everything has an A to a Z, if
Hmm.
that's the case. So whenever there's a change, there has to be some sort of vision. I think one of the most important pieces when you implement change or attempt to implement change is the communication piece. If there is not a strong communication, then there's going to be a missed detail. There's going to be
Hmm.
missed step. And something that I think is part of implementing change and for you and being able to understand how that works is taking into consideration essential skills that you need to learn while you're in your post-secondary education experience, such as written skills, written and oral communication. And we've talked about that when I was influencing you to take a
Hmm.
public speaking class.
Yeah. And with that, I did actually register for the public speaking class, so that is locked away for next semester. Pretty excited about it. But yeah, I think there are a lot of soft skills that are very I think they're necessary for developing like your own like persona, like just you're developing yourself, not even just professionally. Um, just like what we're doing now, having a conversation.
Mhm.
A lot of people can't do that.
Mm-mm.
My roommate last year didn't talk. My roommate before that didn't speak, I think. Like I never had, I mean, now my current roommate won't stop, but um, yeah.
So
But
I think that actually lends to another something else that I think
mhm,
has taken place even post pandemic, which again was not something that I ever went through, but it's focusing on the learner's needs.
Hmm.
So, as you know, I'm in learning and development, and I've been in this realm for how old are you? So, 20 something years. I have been in the learning development field within a corporate environment. And my clientele is adults. And let me tell you, sometimes I think teaching fourth grade would be much easier than teaching adults. Adults have a very short,
The clients
uh,
for my internship were construction workers. All of them. Everyone.
oh, and yes,
Every
yeah.
single one of
So
them.
short span of attention. You have to
Think
keep
dad.
things moving. You have to keep it interactive and whatnot. And so, really, and in today's world, there's a lot of inclusivity. There's a lot of,
Hmm.
taking students that might not learn the same as you do and integrating into the classroom and really looking at all the needs of the student. And the pandemic offered different opportunities than we ever thought was possible. Like, who ever thought you'd go to school online
Hmm.
ever? And if you look at that, you and your sister had two very different experiences. So now that you look at
Yeah,
it,
we
yeah,
did.
you lived your best life. Yeah. Professor
I was
Milhouse knows
gonna
what this is.
say
I
when
already
you
talked about
said
it.
who thought we would go to school online, I was like, I'm not going to school, it's online.
Yeah, we know you lived your best life, but your sister did not. And
She went.
she went to school. She probably worked harder online than she did when she went. Neither here nor there. Anyway, focus. Okay, so when you think about learner needs in post-secondary institutions such as college, there are a lot of different methods and means that students have. So if you were to think about things that you might have needed that you don't see today, what's the steps that you would take to talk to somebody about implementing that change so that you would be successful?
I would say that the biggest change to school that I would make is grades. Grades are stupid. I think if you get rid of grades, keep the assignments, get rid of grades, students will do them because they're not worried about the outcome. Like they'll just do it.
So if there wasn't a grade,
People
how would
participate in during in-class activities. There's no grade tied to them. I've
so
never
if
seen a student actively participate in homework like and enjoy it.
so if you were to say that something that you would want to see in the future go away is a graded assignment.
Yeah. I think you could tie like say I take a test and it's an accuracy grade, but that doesn't reflect on me for my future. For if you make a purchase with your credit card and you pay it off, you're building credit. If you don't pay it off, you're hurting credit.
Hmm.
Like get rid of that whole score, get rid of the thing. Imagine you just like your debit card, you buy it or you don't. Like you either did the assignment or you don't.
So
Like
how would you be able
completion.
to
You could judge by completion.
but how would you be able to truly test the knowledge of the learner?
Interview. This the teacher shouldn't really know. Like it's come a time or like tests like that. Like say it's time to see if you like pass the class or not. What do you know?
So you're saying more of
Like can you
communicative
participate in a conversation? Yeah.
a communicative conversation versus a graded
Hmm.
um, regurgitation of the content.
Yeah, exactly. Because like thinking about my internship and like that was directly in between the summer of 1 year of graphics and then the next year of moving towards going from graphics to more of like web design and like product design stuff like that for my major. And in between, I'm every time I go to class, this is not the real thing. This is not what goes on. These are assignments. These are not real. And then I go to my internship and I'm doing actual work with actual clients and I learn new things with my boss and my coworkers and it's all the
Mhm.
conversation, the dialogue. I didn't learn a single thing from class that I didn't learn immediately from the internship.
So you actually bring up a really good point, and that's it, embedding career preparation.
Hmm.
And I watched a video, and it talked about how almost half So if you're looking at like 100%, just over half of the skills learned and a bachelor's degree, you can move forward into your career. But almost half of the other side, I think it was 37%, the skills that you learned in high school would get you to the same outcome as
I
what
would
you
say
learned
that
in your
too.
from your bachelor's. And on the spot learning, tactical learning, on the
Hmm.
spot learning, on the job learning is actually more valuable than a classroom environment and reading out of a book. And
Hmm.
I think that that's super interesting. And I think that really, 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 really talks about the change in the student. So looking at the new, this is what we're talking about here, right? The new
Hmm.
post-secondary student. So years ago in the dinosaur ages, there was you graduated high school, you went to college, you got a job. That was
Straight
it.
and
You
narrow.
did exactly what you were supposed to do. Today, the goal is to go to college, yes, but there is also the opportunity to start working toward what you want to do and also to focus more of your education on what you want your outcome to be versus taking the general education classes that you will never ever use because that's not where your career path is taking you. Having been there myself. I will never, ever, ever be in a job that I have to use geometry. I can promise you, I will never be in a job that I
I
have to
work with
use
shapes
geometry
and lines, and I
ever.
don't know
Can't
any
like
geometry.
ever. And but yet going into undergrad, and I know your sister Dana's doing this right now. She's like, I don't understand why I have to do this again. I just did this last year and I have to take this class again. And I don't understand it is not what I want to do. So I think that plays a huge role. And I think back to what the original thing that you said is the polling that your
Hmm.
university has, and even your Yik Yak account.
Hmm.
You bring people together who are in it right now, and you
Hmm.
ask them what are the things that you would like to see change, but caveat that with how. There's always a how. You have to have the vision, you have to have the
Hmm.
communication, you have to have the creativity, you have to have the right people in order to make that change happen. I will say one thing about the grades, though, because in the world that you are looking to go into, as well as the
Hmm.
world that I am currently in, unfortunately, metrics do not go away. Metrics
Hmm.
are what move the needle. Metrics are what
Hmm.
tells you you're getting the job done. So, from an industry standpoint, you have to know them and you have to be
Hmm.
able to tell the story of the metric. The same thing holds true when you're talking about grades. So, that's the metric that tells you that you're hitting the mark, that you've met all the requirements, and that you told the story, and this is what you earned. But I do agree with you that I do think today you strive on the conversation around it versus what the actual letter says.
Hmm.
And I truly believe that, and I think I would too because you're always worried about getting an A. Did you get an A? Did you get an A? Did you get an A?
Hmm.
And over the years, didn't I always say to you, you set your own bar?
Yeah,
And as long
you
as
told me that in sixth grade, and since then you've never let me live it down. That I got like A's, and that I now
you
have
set
to
your own
always get
bar
A's in every class
because
since sixth grade.
you showed you could do it.
I did it
You
one
showed,
time, and you just said it every time now.
but if you were a B student, then I would say, did you get a
I'm
B?
student in sixth grade. It's
Because
different than
that's,
college.
listen, we
I
don't
did
need
have a
to dive
point
into
though
all of our
about
dirty
what you said
laundry.
for understanding the metrics and seeing the story.
Hmm.
Teachers don't grade like that anymore. I don't know if you hear that. Someone's screaming at someone beeping.
Okay.
That's college right there. So um most teachers use Turnitin. It's AI software that will batch grade homework. I mean, I have professors that have over 200 students. They're not looking at 200 students' work day to day to day to day to day to day. They're not doing that. And do you think all 200 students did the work, or do you think ChatGPT
So
did the work?
that's the
AI
digital.
is grading AI. Grades are not real anymore.
So that
Like
is one of the
most
digital
assignments are
changes.
not human,
Back in the
and that's a new
dinosaur
student
ages,
thing.
it was written. We had a red pen
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
written on the printed assignment that I printed, by the way, on a dot matrix printer. Printed, and a red pen would circle, highlight, X out, give written feedback. So I know that professors years
Mm-hmm.
ago had to physically do that. And maybe that is the case. Maybe professors today aren't reading the actual work and they are putting it through a machine and whatever it is. And the machine is saying whether or not Heidi hit the mark or not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know. Just to sort of kind of round this out, I think also how students are learning with all those things that we just talked about and how we are implementing different
Mm-hmm.
methods. So, I'm a what's considered a non-traditional student. I'm a working mother with kids in college. And I've done this before. You watched me do this with my MBA, and now I'm doing it again as I have two kids in college now. And but I'm considered non-traditional and I have the opportunity to still be able to learn and get done what I'm striving to succeed for because I can do it online at my own
Mm-hmm.
pace. You are still a standard student where you have your block schedule and
Yep.
you go to class and you
Yep.
listen to the professor in front of the room and you do the assignments, you turn them in, you have discussions, whatever it might be. In my profession, we used to do things in person. All classes were in person. How do you train somebody and really see that they can learn without being in person and have the person in front of the room facilitating the content, and then you build out the curriculum where you've got the learning, you've got the discussion, you have an activity to follow up on the learning and reinforce the learning. Today, all my classes virtual
Mm-hmm.
because companies realize you don't have to fly people in from all over the country, pop them on a screen. But
Yeah.
here's where I see the downfall in that. I know that these professionals are multitasking. I know that they are not fully engaged, and I can build curriculum that does exactly the same thing. Here's the concept. Let's talk about it. Let's do an activity to reinforce what we just learned. And sometimes it's crickets. And unfortunately for me, I don't have that same control to say you're not doing the work because we're at a professional level and they have to they have to take control of their own learning because it's a
Mm-hmm.
different environment. But for you and for me, we are in control of our learning differently, and we have a goal in mind. Like we want
Mm-hmm.
to succeed and we want to do the best. But I think kind of talking about all the different things, digital technology, digital delivery methods, and how they work differently with different types of learners. You work very well with a virtual delivery. Dana does not. Dana needs a person. She needs a physical person in front of her in order to do things because that's just what she's used to. Focusing on those learner needs over time. There were some times where you needed a little extra boost, and there were other
Mm-hmm.
times when Dana did, but for different reasons. So that's a huge thing looking at new students today, and what they're coming in with because
Mm-hmm.
the spectrum is huge of what
Yeah.
all of the needs are, and nothing gets unnoticed. Like everything is talked about today,
Yeah.
to keep that inclusivity and ensuring that all students get the same equality of education.
Mm-hmm.
So, really, really interesting, your perspective on how what you feel as a student today versus what I went through, but am now also going through, and how
Mm-hmm.
how implementing change is so important and talking about it and getting the student's perspective on how to do that, but keeping in mind that it just can't happen overnight. There is a process to implementing change effectively and efficiently in order to meet that end goal.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really well said. Uh, yeah. We're running out of
Awesome.
time. I don't know if you see the top. We have like 2 minutes left. And I was looking at it, I was like, oh, I don't want to start talking because I'm gonna run over.
That's okay. I think that we probably have covered, everything
Hmm.
about change, and thank you, Andrew, for taking the time. I know you're in school, and I know you're working hard, and I know it's a Sunday, and I kind of woke you up. But I really appreciate you taking the time because I think that the perspectives from either side was a really, really awesome way to portray this assignment and talking about implementing change and how to do it because we're looking at it from two different lenses. But you're about to head into a different, when you go into your master's program, that's going to be
Hmm.
totally different. And
That's
you're
what
going to
they
be like,
say. Not looking that hard so far.
well, wait till next year when you have to have a job.
Oh yeah, oh, I forgot
Oh
about that.
yeah, the job part. They actually working all day and then doing class. You could do it though. We have good genes.
Fine.
All right. Thank you so much, buddy. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to talking to you later in the day.
Sounds good. Talk to you later.
All right.
Bye.